He thought he was protecting the elite. He thought the man in the hoodie was just another trespasser, trying to sneak into a world he didn't belong in. Garrison Pratt, the head of security for Sovereign Air, spent 45 minutes humiliating Marcus Thorne in front of a terminal full of people. He mocked his clothes, destroyed his luggage, and called the police to arrest him. But Pratt made one fatal miscalculation. He didn't check who Marcus really was. And by the time the silver badge came out, it wasn't just an arrest, it was the end of Pratt's entire life. This is the story of how arrogance met federal justice. The air inside John F. Kennedy International Airport's Terminal 8 usually smelled of expensive coffee and floor wax, but today, to Special Agent Marcus Thorne, it smelled like exhaustion. Marcus adjusted the strap of his duffel bag, his shoulder aching. He hadn't slept in 26 hours. The undercover operation in Chicago had gone south, resulting in a high-speed chase that ended with 3 arrests, but the big fish, Elias Vance, had slipped the net. Intelligence suggested Vance was attempting to flee the country via a private charter masquerading as a commercial luxury hop to Zurich. Marcus had to be on that plane, not as a Fed, but as a ghost. He looked down at his attire. He was wearing a pair of worn-in Nike Dunks, grey sweatpants, and a black oversized hoodie with the hood pulled up halfway. It was the uniform of comfort, but it was also part of his cover. To the untrained eye, he looked like a tired traveler, maybe a student, or perhaps a musician trying to stay low-key. To a biased eye, however, he looked like a problem. Marcus approached the frosted glass doors of the Sovereign Air first-class lounge. This wasn't just a lounge, it was a fortress for the ultra-wealthy. Membership required a 7-figure bank balance and an invitation. Marcus had neither, but he had something better. A spoofed digital boarding pass created by the Bureau's cyber division and a federal warrant tucked deep in the lining of his bag that gave him jurisdiction to be anywhere Vance was. He reached for the door handle, but it didn't budge. A large hand had pressed against the glass from the inside, holding it shut. Marcus looked up. Standing on the other side of the glass was a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory that built bullies. He was 6'4", wearing a tactical black polo shirt with Sovereign Security embroidered in gold thread on the chest. His name tag read, G. Pratt, Director of Security, Garrison Pratt. Marcus knew the type. Ex-military or failed police academy, pumped full of supplements and a superiority complex. Pratt opened the door a crack, blocking the gap with his massive frame. He didn't look at Marcus's face. He looked at his shoes, then his hoodie. He sneered. "Deliveries are at the back, pal," Pratt said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble meant to intimidate. Marcus blinked, his eyes bloodshot from fatigue. He didn't have the energy for this. "I'm not a delivery driver, I'm a passenger." Pratt let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound void of humor. "Passenger? Wrong terminal, son. Spirit and Frontier are in Terminal 4. This is Sovereign. We don't sell tickets on Expedia." "I know where I am," Marcus said, his voice calm, controlled. The Bureau training kicked in automatically. De-escalate, observe, deflect. "I have a ticket for Flight 909 to Zurich." He pulled his phone out to display the QR code. Pratt didn't even look at the screen. He slapped his hand over Marcus's phone, pushing it down. The contact was aggressive, bordering on assault. "I don't care what kind of Photoshop nonsense you have on that screen," Pratt spat. "We've had 3 break-ins this month. People trying to steal silverware, free booze, bothering our VIPs. You fit the profile." Marcus stiffened. "The profile?" "Yeah, the I can't afford to breathe this air profile," Pratt said, crossing his arms. His biceps bulged against the fabric of his shirt. "Turn around. Walk away." Before I call the real cops and have you trespass listed from the entire airport." Marcus took a deep breath. He checked his watch. Elias Vance was scheduled to arrive at the lounge in 20 minutes. If Marcus wasn't inside and blended into a corner by then, the operation was blown. If he made a scene, Vance would see the commotion and bolt. "Look, Mr. Pratt," Marcus said, keeping his hands visible and non-threatening. "I understand you're doing your job. You're protecting the lounge. I respect that. But if you scan my pass, you'll see it's valid. I just want to go inside, get a water, and wait for my flight. I'm not here to cause trouble." "You are the trouble." Pratt stepped out of the lounge now, closing the door behind him. He was looming over Marcus, invading his personal space. "You think because you bought some scalped ticket or hacked a frequent flyer account you can walk in here with those shoes? We have a dress code." "The dress code applies to the dining area, not the transit lounge," Marcus corrected him. He knew the regulations of every airline operating out of JFK. It was part of the prep. Pratt's face turned a shade of crimson. He hated being corrected. "Listen to me, boy. You are not getting in. I am the director of security for this sector. What I say is law. Now move your ass before I move it for you." Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly. The word boy hung in the air, heavy and ugly. "I'm asking you one last time," Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming deadly quiet. "Scan the ticket. Let me in. You do not want to make this a thing." "Is that a threat?" Pratt shouted, suddenly raising his voice so that passers-by turned to look. "Are you threatening an airport official? We got a situation here." Pratt reached for his radio, his eyes gleaming with malicious delight. He wasn't just doing a job. He was hunting. And he had decided Marcus was his prey for the afternoon. The terminal was beginning to fill with the midday rush, businessmen in trench coats, families dragging screaming toddlers, and flight crews rushing to gates slowed down as Garrison Pratt's voice echoed off the high ceilings. "I need backup at the Sovereign Lounge entrance," Pratt barked into his radio, staring directly at Marcus with a smirk. "I have a hostile subject refusing to vacate the premises. Potential threat." Marcus didn't move. He didn't run. He simply stood his ground, his mind racing. Option A. Flash the badge now. If he did that, Pratt would freeze, but the commotion would alert the lounge staff. If Elias Vance had anyone on the inside, which he almost certainly did, Vance would be tipped off that a federal agent was at the gate. The target would vanish. Option B. Endure. Let Pratt play his game, stall for time, hope the local police were more competent than this rent-a-cop. "You're making a mistake," Marcus said softly. "Shut your mouth," Pratt snapped. Two other security guards, younger and looking unsure of themselves, came jogging up. One was named Kowalski, the other Miller. "What's the problem, boss?" Kowalski asked, eyeing Marcus. He saw a calm man in a hoodie, not a threat. "Subject is belligerent," Pratt lied smoothly. "Attempted to force entry. Claimed he had a ticket. I suspect he's carrying stolen goods. Probably snatched a bag from the carousel and tried to hide in here." "I have my ID," Marcus offered, reaching slowly for his back pocket. "Hands!" Pratt screamed, reaching for his taser. "Don't you reach for anything!" A ripple of fear went through the crowd. People gasped. Phones came out. The red recording lights blinked on like hundreds of tiny judgmental eyes. Marcus froze, hands in the air. "I am reaching for my wallet, to show you my identification." "I don't trust you," Pratt said, playing to the crowd now. He turned to the onlookers, raising his voice. "Ladies and gentlemen, please stand back. This is for your safety. We have a security breach." He turned back to Marcus. "Kick that bag over here. Slowly." "You have no right to search my bag without a warrant or probable cause," Marcus stated. He knew the law better than Pratt knew his own mother's birthday. You are private security. You are not sworn law enforcement. In this terminal, I am the law, Pratt growled. He stepped forward and kicked Marcus's duffel bag. It slid across the polished floor, spinning to a stop near the wall. Miller, dump it. Boss, maybe we should wait for PD, Miller suggested nervously. He hasn't actually done anything violent. I said dump it, Pratt roared. Check for weapons. Check for drugs. Guys like this always have something. Marcus watched, a cold fury building in his gut. Inside that bag was his standard issue Glock 19, secured in a locked biometric travel safe. But there was also classified dossier paperwork on the Vance cartel. If they scattered that across the floor, the operation wasn't just dead. It was a national security leak. Do not open that bag, Marcus warned, his voice cutting through the noise. Officer, listen to me. Inside that bag is sensitive material. If you open it, you are violating federal privacy statutes. Pratt laughed. Federal statutes? Listen to the lawyer in sweatpants. Did you learn that on Law and Order? Pratt shoved Miller aside and grabbed the zipper of the duffel bag himself. Stop! Marcus shouted, taking a step forward. Pratt reacted instantly. He lunged, grabbing Marcus by the hoodie. He was strong, heavy with muscle, and he used his weight to slam Marcus back against the frosted glass wall of the lounge. Thud. The sound was sickening. The crowd screamed. Assault! Someone shouted from the back. He didn't do anything. Back off! Pratt yelled at the crowd, keeping one forearm pressed against Marcus's throat. He lunged at me. You all saw it. He attacked a security officer. Marcus struggled to breathe, the fabric of his hoodie cutting into his windpipe. He could have disarmed Pratt in 3 seconds. A simple joint lock, a pivot, and Pratt would be on his knees with a broken wrist. But Marcus couldn't do it. If he used advanced combat techniques, he blew his cover instantly. A random traveler doesn't know Krav Maga. A random traveler gets scared. So Marcus had to act the victim. He let his hands go limp. I can't breathe, he choked out. Then stop struggling, Pratt hissed, his face inches from Marcus. Pratt's breath smelled of stale coffee and onions. You picked the wrong day and the wrong white man to mess with. It was a whisper, meant only for Marcus. The mask had slipped. This wasn't about security. It was about hate. Let him go! A woman stepped out of the crowd. She was dressed in a sharp business suit, holding a briefcase. She looked like a lawyer. I am recording this. You are choking him. He is compliant. Pratt looked up, distracted for a split second. Stay back, lady. My name is Sarah Jenkins, she announced, holding her phone steady. I am an attorney. You are committing assault and battery. Let him go immediately. Pratt hesitated. He released the pressure on Marcus's throat, but kept him pinned. He's detained until Port Authority arrives. Then detain him, Sarah snapped. Don't strangle him. Pratt stepped back, adjusting his uniform, trying to regain his composure. He pointed a shaking finger at Marcus. Stay there. Don't move a muscle. Marcus coughed, rubbing his neck. He looked at Sarah and gave a small nod of thanks. She nodded back, her eyes fierce. Miller, Pratt barked, sweating now. Open the bag, now. We need to find something to justify this, or this bitch lawyer is going to be a headache. He said the last part under his breath, but Marcus heard it. We need to find something to justify this. That was the moment Marcus knew it was going to get dirty. Pratt wasn't looking for the truth. He was looking for a scapegoat. Miller unzipped the main compartment. He started pulling out clothes, a spare hoodie, socks, a DOP kit. Dig deeper, Pratt ordered. Check the lining. Miller reached in, and his hand hit the hard metal box at the bottom. Boss, there's a safe in here. Pratt's eyes lit up. A safe? Who travels with a safe in a gym bag? He looked at Marcus with a triumphant grin. Drugs, or is it cash? Stolen jewelry? It's personal property, Marcus said, his voice raspy. It's evidence, Pratt declared. He walked over and picked up the biometric box. It was small, black, and heavy. Open it. No, Marcus said. I said open it. And I said no, you have no authority. Pratt looked at the box, then at the crowd, then at Marcus. He was cornered. He had assaulted a passenger, found no drugs, and now had a locked box he couldn't explain. He needed a win. Port Authority is 5 minutes out, Pratt said to his men. We're not waiting. This is a bomb threat. The crowd gasped. What? Miller looked terrified. Boss, it's just a box. It's a sealed container in the possession of a hostile subject who attempted to breach a high-security area, Pratt shouted, spinning the narrative in real time. It could be an IED. Clear the area. Evacuate the immediate vicinity. Are you insane? Marcus yelled, breaking his composure. It's not a bomb. You're going to cause a panic. Shut up! Pratt kicked Marcus's legs, forcing him to his knees. Get on the ground, hands behind your head. Sirens began to wail in the distance. The terminal was descending into chaos. People were running. The bomb threat whisper was turning into a scream. And amidst the chaos, Marcus saw him. Through the glass doors of the lounge, looking out with mild amusement at the scene, was a man in a grey Italian suit, holding a glass of scotch. Elias Vance. The target was watching. He wasn't running. He was entertained. Marcus realized with a sinking heart that the operation was hanging by a thread. If the bomb squad came, they would blow the safe. If they blew the safe, they'd find the gun and the badge. Vance would see it all on the news before Marcus could ever get close to him. He had to end this. Now. Pratt was standing over him, baton drawn, looking like a conqueror. You're done, boy, Pratt sneered. You're going to Guantanamo. Marcus looked up from the floor. The submissive traveler vanished. The exhausted undercover agent vanished. In their place, the predator returned. Pratt, Marcus said clearly, his voice cutting through the sirens. Don't speak to me. I'm going to give you one chance to save your pension, Marcus said. Look at the luggage tag on the handle of the bag. The red one. Pratt blinked. What? Look at the tag. Pratt, confused by the sudden authority in the man's voice, glanced down. He hadn't noticed the small, leather-bound tag attached to the handle. It wasn't a standard airline tag. It was embossed with a gold seal. Pratt leaned in, squinting. It says Department of Justice, Marcus said. Official courier. Pratt froze. He looked at the tag, then back at Marcus. Doubt flickered in his eyes for the first time. Fake, Pratt whispered, though his voice wavered. You can buy those online. Open the side pocket, Marcus commanded. Not the main one, the small one on the left, reaching in with 2 fingers. Why? Because inside that pocket is a leather wallet, and inside that wallet is something that is going to make you wish you had called in sick today. Pratt hesitated. The crowd was watching. Sarah the lawyer was filming. Vance was watching from the lounge. Do it, Marcus dared him. Pratt reached for the bag. The airport terminal, usually a cacophony of announcements and rushing footsteps, had fallen into a strange, suspended silence. It was the kind of silence that precedes a thunderclap. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on the interaction between the towering, red-faced security director and the man kneeling on the floor in the oversized hoodie. Garrison Pratt's hand trembled slightly as he reached into the side pocket of the duffel bag. He told himself it was adrenaline, the rush of the takedown. But deep in the lizard brain that governed his survival instincts, a warning bell was ringing. Don't touch it. Walk away. But his ego, a beast far larger than his intellect, pushed him forward. He had an audience. He had to finish the show. His thick fingers brushed against the cool leather of a wallet. It wasn't the Velcro-strapped nylon wallet of a broke college student, nor the bulky bifold of a tourist. It was slim, high-quality Cordovan leather. Pratt pulled it out. "Let's see who you really are," Pratt muttered, loud enough for the front row of the crowd to hear. He expected a fake ID, maybe a library card, or perhaps a suspended driver's license he could wave around as proof of this man's delinquency. He flipped the wallet open. The light from the terminal ceiling hit the object inside, and for a second it seemed to flare. Embedded in the leather was a heavy metallic shield. It wasn't a plastic security guard toy. It was gold. An eagle topped the shield, wings spread in a display of absolute authority. Below the eagle, the blue enamel lettering was crisp and unmistakable. Federal Bureau of Investigation, Special Agent. And below that, an ID card with Marcus's photo, clean-shaven, in a suit, looking stoic, and the holographic seal of the United States Department of Justice. Pratt stared at it. His brain refused to process the visual data. It was like looking at a ghost. The man he had just thrown against a wall, the man he had choked, the man he had publicly humiliated and accused of carrying a bomb, was a Fed. Pratt's mouth opened, but no sound came out. The blood drained from his face so fast it left him looking grey and sickly. "Read it out loud," Marcus said from the floor. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a gavel strike. "Read the name and the title, Mr. Pratt." Pratt looked up. The crowd was leaning in. Sarah Jenkins, the lawyer with the phone, zoomed in on the wallet in Pratt's hand. "It's a prop," Pratt stammered. He snapped the wallet shut, trying to hide it from the cameras. "It's a fake badge. You can buy these on the dark web." "You know that's a lie," Marcus said, slowly getting to his feet. He didn't ask for permission this time. He simply rose, dusting off his knees. "You felt the weight. You saw the holograms. You're holding federal property." "Stay down!" Pratt shouted, stepping back and raising his baton again. But this time the threat was hollow. His voice cracked. "I said stay down. Impersonating a federal officer is a felony." "I'm not impersonating anyone," Marcus said, his eyes locking onto Pratt's. "I am Special Agent Marcus Thorne, Counter-Terrorism Division. And you, Mr. Pratt, have just assaulted a federal agent in the performance of his duties. You have obstructed an active investigation, and you have violated my civil rights under color of authority." The crowd gasped. A murmur of, "He's an FBI agent," rippled through the onlookers. The dynamic shifted instantly. The predator was now the prey. "Miller, Kowalski!" Pratt yelled, looking for his subordinates. "Cuff him! He's lying! It's a fake!" Miller looked at the wallet, still clutched in Pratt's hand. He looked at Marcus, who stood with a calm, terrifying confidence. Miller took a step back. "I don't think so, boss," Miller said, raising his hands. "If that's real, we're screwed." "It's not real!" Pratt screamed, spit flying from his lips. He was panicking. If he admitted the badge was real, his life was over. He would lose his job, his pension, his reputation. He would go to prison. The only way out was to double down. He had to commit to the lie. "He stole it, or he forged it. He's a dangerous con artist. Get the cuffs on him now, or you're fired." Miller and Kowalski exchanged a look of sheer terror. They feared Pratt, but they feared the FBI more. They stayed put. "Fine, I'll do it myself." Pratt holstered his baton and grabbed a pair of zip ties from his belt. He lunged at Marcus again. Marcus had a choice. He could drop Pratt right there. A swift strike to the solar plexus and a leg sweep would end it. But he glanced toward the Sovereign Lounge. Through the glass, Elias Vance was still watching. If Marcus fought back and caused a brawl, the airport police would swarm the area, the lounge would be locked down, and Vance would slip out the back exit designated for high-value client evacuations. Marcus had to play the long game. He had to let Pratt hang himself completely. "I am submitting," Marcus announced loudly for the cameras. "I am not resisting." He turned around and offered his wrists. Pratt grabbed them roughly, cinching the plastic zip ties so tight they bit into the skin. "Gotcha. You think a fancy piece of tin scares me? I run this terminal." "You're making a grave mistake," Sarah Jenkins shouted from the sidelines. "I saw the badge. It looked real." "Back off, lady, or you're next for obstruction," Pratt roared. He shoved Marcus forward. "Move. We're going to the holding room. We'll see how tough you are when we strip search you and find whatever drugs you're really smuggling." As Pratt marched Marcus away from the lounge entrance, pushing him through the parting crowd, Marcus's eyes darted to the lounge window one last time. Elias Vance raised his glass in a mock toast, a smirk playing on his lips. He thought he was watching a common criminal get busted. He didn't know the man in the zip ties was the only person on Earth who knew where the bodies were buried. Marcus grit his teeth. "Enjoy the drink, Elias," he thought. "I'll see you at the gate." "Where are we going?" Marcus asked as they moved down a service corridor, away from the public eye. "Somewhere quiet," Pratt hissed close to his ear. "Somewhere where there aren't any cameras to save you." The ominous threat hung in the air, heavy with malice. Pratt wasn't taking him to the police station. He was taking him to the security office, a windowless room where Sovereign Air Security handled problematic passengers off the record. Marcus's heart rate slowed. This was dangerous, yes, but it was also an opportunity. Alone with Pratt, the rules of engagement changed. The holding room smelled of stale cigarette smoke and industrial cleaner. It was a concrete box hidden behind the baggage claim belts, furnished with a metal table, 3 mismatched chairs, and a flickering fluorescent light that buzzed like a dying insect. Pratt shoved Marcus inside, causing him to stumble into the table. Miller followed, looking pale and nauseous. Kowalski had conveniently disappeared, likely to call his union rep or hide in the bathroom. "Sit," Pratt commanded. Marcus sat. He kept his posture upright, his breathing rhythmic. The zip ties were uncomfortable, cutting off circulation to his thumbs, but he focused past the pain. Pratt locked the heavy steel door and turned the deadbolt. Click. "Okay, Mr. Special Agent," Pratt said, using air quotes with his fingers. He paced the small room, the adrenaline beginning to curdle into a manic, nervous energy. He tossed Marcus's wallet onto the metal table. "Let's talk about the trouble you're in." "I'm not in trouble," Marcus said calmly. "You are. Kidnapping, false imprisonment, assault, impersonating a law enforcement officer, because you and I both know you're barely a mall cop." Pratt slammed his hands on the table, leaning into Marcus's face. "I am the Director of Security. I have jurisdiction." "You have jurisdiction over lost luggage and drunk pilots," Marcus corrected him. "You do not have jurisdiction over the FBI. Now cut these ties, give me my phone, and maybe, just maybe, I won't have you charged with federal kidnapping." Pratt laughed, but it sounded brittle. "You think you can scare me? I know your type. You get a fake badge, you dress like a thug, and you try to bully working-class people. I bet that badge is tin. I bet if I scratch it, it peels." "Miller," Marcus said, shifting his gaze to the younger guard who was hovering by the door. "What's your first name?" Miller jumped. David." "David," Marcus said softly. "Do you have a family?" "Shut up," Pratt yelled. "Don't talk to him." "David," Marcus continued, ignoring Pratt. "In about 10 minutes, Port Authority police are going to breach that door. When they do, They are going to find me unlawfully restrained. Garrison Pratt is going to prison. Do you want to go with him, or do you want to be a witness?" Miller swallowed hard. Sweat was beading on his forehead. "Boss, maybe we should just call PD. Let them run the badge. If it's fake, they arrest him. If it's real..." "It's not real." Pratt grabbed the wallet and threw it against the wall. The heavy thud echoed in the small room. "It's a prop, and we need to find what he's really hiding before the cops get here. If we find drugs, the badge doesn't matter. We're heroes." Pratt turned to the duffel bag, which Miller had carried in. "Dump it," Pratt ordered. "Tear the lining out. Check the soles of the shoes. He's a mule, I know it." "Don't touch that bag," Marcus warned, his voice dropping to a sub-zero temperature. "David, if you touch that bag, you are tampering with classified evidence in an ongoing RACO investigation." Miller froze, his hand hovering over the zipper. He looked at Pratt, then at Marcus. The authority radiating from the man in the hoodie was undeniable. It wasn't the bluster of a tough guy. It was the cold certainty of a man who had hunted cartels and killers. "Move!" Pratt shoved Miller aside. "I'll do it." Pratt unzipped the bag and grabbed a pocket knife from his belt. He slashed the lining of the bag. "Ripe!" "Destruction of government property," Marcus noted verbally. "Add it to the list." Pratt frantically pulled out clothes, tossing them on the dirty floor. He grabbed the biometric safe box again. "Open it. What's inside? Heroin? Fentanyl?" "My service weapon," Marcus said, "and a warrant for the arrest of a man sitting in your lounge right now. A man who is about to board a flight and disappear with $50 million in laundered cryptocurrency." Pratt stopped. He looked at the black box. "A gun?" "A Glock 19 Menem," Marcus confirmed. "Loaded. One in the chamber. If you try to pry that box open, you might discharge it. Or more likely, you'll just destroy the biometric lock and guarantee yourself an extra 5 years in Leavenworth." Pratt stared at the box. The reality was starting to seep through the cracks in his delusion. The specific details Marcus provided, the model of the gun, the nature of the warrant, were too precise. "You're lying," Pratt whispered, but he didn't try to open the box. Suddenly, a sharp banging came from the steel door. Bang! 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 "Security! Open up!" A deep, authoritative voice boomed from the hallway. Pratt jumped as if he'd been shot. Miller looked relieved. "That's Port Authority," Miller said. "Thank God." "Don't open it," Pratt hissed. "We haven't found the drugs yet. If we open it now, he spins his story, and we look like idiots." "Open the door, Garrison," the voice outside shouted. It was Sergeant O'Malley, the head of the Port Authority unit at Terminal 8. He and Pratt had a history, mostly O'Malley telling Pratt to stop harassing tourists. "We have a situation, Sergeant," Pratt yelled through the door. "Suspect is contained. Potential bomb threat. We are securing the evidence." "Bomb threat?" O'Malley's voice changed. "If it's a bomb threat, why aren't you evacuated? Open this door immediately or we are breaching." Marcus looked at his watch. It was 12:45 p.m. Vance's flight boarded at 1:15 p.m. He was running out of time. "Pratt," Marcus said. "This is the end of the line. Open the door. Let Sergeant O'Malley in. If you do it now, I might tell the U.S. Attorney that you cooperated at the end. If you force them to breach, I will make it my personal mission to ensure you serve maximum time." Pratt looked at the door, trembling. He looked at Marcus. The hatred in his eyes was being replaced by fear, but the pride was a stubborn root. "You ruined my day," Pratt spat at Marcus. "You came into my terminal." "You ruined your own life," Marcus replied. "I was just buying a coffee." Pratt walked to the door. He didn't unlock it. Instead, he turned back to Marcus with a twisted look of desperation. If I'm going down, Pratt whispered, pulling a small, clear baggie of white powder from his own pocket, something he likely confiscated from a clubber months ago and kept for leverage. You're coming with me. Miller gasped. Boss, no. Pratt moved to stuff the baggie into Marcus's hoodie pocket. This was the line. Marcus had been passive. He had been compliant. He had waited for the system to work. But planting evidence was a declaration of war. As Pratt leaned in, Marcus moved. Despite the zip ties binding his wrists behind his back, Marcus dropped his center of gravity and pivoted on the chair. He launched a double-legged kick, driving the heel of his sneakers squarely into Pratt's kneecap. Crack! Pratt screamed, a high-pitched guttural sound, and collapsed to the floor, clutching his leg. The baggie of white powder flew across the room and landed in the center of the floor, plain as day. "Miller!" Marcus shouted, his voice commanding. "Open the door! Now!" Miller, terrified and seeing his boss writhing on the floor, didn't hesitate. He scrambled to the door and threw the bolt. The door swung open. Sergeant O'Malley stood there, weapon drawn, flanked by 4 uniformed officers. "Drop it!" O'Malley shouted, aiming at the room generally. He saw Marcus zip-tied on the chair. He saw Pratt screaming on the floor, clutching a shattered knee. He saw the baggie of drugs in the middle of the room, and he saw the FBI badge lying on the table. O'Malley, a 20-year veteran, assessed the scene in 2 seconds. He looked at the badge. He recognized the gold shield immediately. He holstered his weapon and walked over to Marcus. "Special Agent?" O'Malley asked, picking up the wallet. "Agent Thorne," Marcus confirmed. "Department of Justice. I need these cuffs off, Sergeant. Right now." O'Malley pulled a cutter from his belt and sliced the zip ties. Marcus rubbed his wrists, standing up and stretching his shoulders. "What the hell happened here?" O'Malley asked, looking down at Pratt, who was sobbing. "Attempted planting of evidence, kidnapping, assault on a federal officer," Marcus listed off rapidly. "Miller, there is a witness. He tried to stop him." Miller nodded vigorously. "He tried to plant coke on him, Sarge. I saw it. I swear." O'Malley looked at Pratt with pure disgust. "Garrison, you dumb son of a bitch! You finally did it!" "He broke my leg," Pratt wailed. "He assaulted me." "He defended himself against a felon," Marcus said coldly. He grabbed his duffel bag. "Sergeant, arrest him. Secure the scene. Take statements. But I have to go." "Go. You're a material witness. Victim," O'Malley said. "I need you for processing." "I have a target in the Sovereign Lounge," Marcus said, checking his watch. 12:50 p.m. "Elias Vance, the cartel leader. He's boarding in 20 minutes. If I don't get up there, this entire circus was for nothing." O'Malley's eyes widened. "Vance, the ghostly guy from the Chicago case." "The same. He's on flight 909. Marcus grabbed his biometric safe, placed his thumb on the scanner, and the box clicked open. He pulled out his Glock 19 and his holster, clipping it onto his sweatpants in one smooth motion. He threw the badge around his neck, letting it hang visibly over the hoodie. "I need access to the tarmac," Marcus said. "He's not going to walk through the gate once he sees you guys. He's going to try the service exit." O'Malley nodded. "I'll give you 2 units. Go." Marcus didn't look back at Pratt. The man was finished. The karma hadn't just hit him, it had crushed him. He was writhing on a dirty floor, betrayed by his own men, facing decades in prison, watching the man he called Boy walk out to save the day. Marcus sprinted out of the holding room, back into the terminal light. The drama was over. The hunt was back on. The walk from the holding cells back to the main concourse was less of a walk and more of a tactical advance. Marcus Thorne moved with a speed that parted the crowds. He was no longer the weary traveler in a hoodie. He was a kinetic force wrapped in cotton and denim. The gold badge hanging around his neck swung with every stride, a talisman that turned confusion into compliance. People moved. Security guards who had seen the commotion earlier averted their eyes, terrified of making eye contact with the man who had just taken down Garrison Pratt. Marcus checked his earpiece, a standard-issue bureau piece he had retrieved from his safe. "O'Malley, what's your status?" Marcus asked, his voice low. "I've got units moving to the jetway," Sergeant O'Malley's voice crackled in his ear. "But Thorne, you need to know. Sovereign Air is legally considered a diplomatic safe zone for certain clients. It's a jurisdictional nightmare. If Vance gets on that bird and the tail number is registered to a foreign shell company, we can't touch him until he lands, and he's heading to a non-extradition zone." "He's not taking off," Marcus said grimly. "I'm breaching the lounge." Marcus reached the frosted glass doors of the Sovereign Lounge for the second time that day. 20 minutes ago, he had been barred from entry, humiliated and assaulted. Now, he didn't even pause. He kicked the door open. The sound was like a gunshot in a library. The Sovereign Lounge was a sanctuary of hushed tones, clinking crystal and soft jazz. It smelled of expensive cologne and old money. At the reception desk, an immaculately dressed hostess looked up, gasping as the door swung wide. "Sir, you cannot—" she began, her eyes widening as she recognized the hoodie from the earlier incident. Marcus held up his hand, palm out, displaying the badge. "Federal agent, everyone stays seated. No one moves." The room froze. High-powered CEOs, celebrities hiding behind sunglasses, and diplomats holding brandy snifters all turned to stare. The silence was absolute. Marcus scanned the room. It was a maze of high-backed velvet armchairs and marble partitions. He ignored the stairs and focused on the far corner, near the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the runway. There he was. Elias Vance sat in a leather wingback chair, looking like the king of the world. He was sipping his scotch, one leg crossed over the other, admiring the view of his private Gulfstream G650 being prepped on the tarmac below. Standing next to him was his personal security detail, a man Marcus knew from the dossiers as the Dane, a former European mercenary named Klaus. Vance hadn't noticed Marcus yet. He was too busy laughing at something on his phone, probably the video of Marcus being choked by Pratt. Marcus walked across the plush carpet. He didn't draw his weapon yet. There were too many civilians. He needed to close the distance. He stopped 3 feet from Vance's table. "Is the scotch good, Elias?" Marcus asked. Vance froze. The glass halted halfway to his mouth. He slowly turned his head, his expression shifting from amusement to confusion, and then to a cold, hard recognition. He looked at Marcus's hoodie, then at the badge, then at the fierce intelligence in Marcus's eyes. "Mr. Thorne," Vance said, his voice smooth as silk, though his knuckles whitened around the glass. "I was under the impression you were being detained. I saw quite the show." "The show is over," Marcus said. "Stand up, hands where I can see them." Klaus, the bodyguard, shifted. He was massive, wearing a tailored suit that barely concealed the bulk of a shoulder holster. He stepped between Marcus and Vance. "Back away," Klaus grunted, his accent thick. "Mr. Vance is a private citizen. You have no business here." "Klaus Vestergaard," Marcus recited, looking the giant in the eye. "Wanted in Hamburg for racketeering. Wanted in Chicago for assault. If you reach for your jacket, I will drop you where you stand." Klaus hesitated. He was a professional. He knew a bluff from a promise, and Marcus Thorne didn't look like he was bluffing. Vance set his drink down. He stood up, smoothing his suit jacket. He wasn't panicked. Not yet. Men like Elias Vance believed they could buy their way out of gravity itself. "Agent Thorne," Vance smiled, a shark-like baring of teeth. "You're making a scene. Again. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough for one day? That security guard, Mr. Pratt, was it? He seemed to think you were a vagrant. Now you come in here waving a badge? How much is the FBI paying you? Whatever it is, I can double it, triple it, just to walk away and let me catch my flight." "You think this is about money?" Marcus stepped closer, invading Vance's personal space. "You poisoned 3 blocks of Chicago with your product. You laundered $50 million through shell companies that destroyed pension funds for teachers and firefighters. You aren't a businessman, Elias. You're a parasite." Vance's smile vanished. "I am a job creator, and you are a civil servant in sweatpants. You have no warrant that can touch me in here. This is private property." "Actually," Marcus pulled the folded warrant from his back pocket. It was crumpled from the struggle with Pratt, but the signature of the federal judge was still legible. "The warrant is federal. It covers every inch of American soil, including this lounge. You're under arrest." Marcus reached for his handcuffs. "Klaus," Vance said softly. The command was subtle, but the reaction was explosive. Klaus didn't draw a gun. Instead, he grabbed the heavy marble table they were standing around and flipped it. Crash! The table slammed into Marcus's legs. It didn't break bone, but the impact was enough to knock him off balance. Glass shattered everywhere. The lounge patron screamed and dove for cover. "Go!" Klaus roared to Vance. Vance didn't hesitate. He sprinted not toward the main exit, but toward the VIP egress, a discreet glass door that led directly to the jet bridge and the tarmac. Marcus rolled over the overturned table, ignoring the pain in his shins. Klaus was waiting for him, pulling a retractable steel baton from his sleeve. "You are not passing," Klaus growled. Marcus didn't have time for a duel. Vance was getting away. "Police, get down!" Marcus shouted, drawing his Glock but keeping it pointed low. He couldn't shoot. The backdrop was full of civilians. Klaus lunged, swinging the baton at Marcus's head. Marcus ducked, the steel rod whistling inches above his ear. He stepped inside Klaus's guard, driving his shoulder into the big man's chest. It was like hitting a brick wall. Klaus didn't move. He grabbed Marcus by the hoodie, just like Pratt had, and prepared to hammer his face with the baton. Not this time, Marcus thought. He didn't resist the pull. He went with it, driving his knee upward with every ounce of strength he had, aiming for the groin. Klaus's eyes bugged out. The breath left him in a wheezing gasp. His grip loosened. Marcus followed up with a palm heel strike to the chin, snapping Klaus's head back. The giant stumbled, tripping over the debris of the broken table. He crashed into a display case of vintage wines, bringing the whole structure down in a rain of glass and expensive Merlot. Marcus didn't wait to see if he got up. He holstered his weapon and sprinted for the VIP door. He burst through it, finding himself in a long, sterile white corridor that sloped downward. At the end of the hall, he saw the tail of Vance's suit coat disappearing around the corner toward the jetway. "O'Malley!" Marcus shouted into his comms while running. "Suspect is heading for the tarmac. He's trying to board. Block the plane!" "We can't!" O'Malley shouted back, the sound of sirens wailing in the background. "The pilot has already requested pushback. He's claiming a medical emergency on board to clear the runway. Tower is confused. They might give him clearance." "Do not let that plane move!" Marcus yelled, bursting out of the corridor and onto the metal grating of the exterior stairs. The cold wind of the airfield hit him. The smell of Jet A1 fuel was overpowering. Below him, on the concrete expanse of the tarmac, the sleek white Gulfstream G650 was already spooling up its engines. The whine of the turbines was a high-pitched scream that vibrated in Marcus's teeth. Vance was at the bottom of the stairs, running across the tarmac toward the plane's lowering air stairs. He looked back, saw Marcus, and ran faster. The race was on. The tarmac was a chaotic landscape of noise and danger. Marcus vaulted over the railing, dropping 10 feet to the concrete below. 50 yards ahead, Elias Vance was scrambling up the air stairs of his Gulfstream G650. "Start it! Go!" Vance screamed at the cockpit. The engines whined into a high-pitched scream, and the stairs began to retract. The jet began to roll. Marcus knew he couldn't outrun a jet on foot. He spotted a baggage tug moving nearby. He sprinted alongside it, shouting at the driver to bail out. As the driver dove for safety, Marcus jumped behind the wheel, flooring the accelerator. "Thorne, disengage!" O'Malley shouted in his earpiece. "You'll get sucked into the intake." Marcus ignored him. The Gulfstream was turning toward the active runway. If it made that turn, Vance was gone forever. Marcus unhooked the heavy luggage carts behind the tug, giving the small tractor a burst of speed. He steered directly into the path of the taxiing jet, aiming for the left landing gear. It was a suicide run. At the last second, Marcus dove from the moving vehicle, rolling across the abrasive concrete, his skin scraping raw. Crunch! The tug slammed into the landing strut with the force of a missile. The metal buckled, the hydraulics burst, and the massive jet listed violently to the left. Its wingtip carved a shower of sparks into the tarmac before the plane skidded to a halt, bogged down in the safety verge mud. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of damaged hydraulics and approaching sirens. Marcus, battered and bleeding, stood up and limped toward the plane. The door opened, and a dazed, soot-covered Elias Vance stumbled out. He looked at the wreckage in disbelief. "You destroyed a $60 million aircraft," he whispered. "Put it on your expense account," Marcus rasped. He slammed the billionaire against the fuselage, snapping the handcuffs on. "Elias Vance, you are under arrest for racketeering and conspiracy to commit murder." As Marcus tightened the cuffs, a convoy of vehicles screeched to a halt. Sergeant O'Malley jumped out, followed immediately by a news crew, cameras rolling to capture the takedown. But the most important spectator sat in the back of a Port Authority cruiser behind them. Garrison Pratt, handcuffed and defeated, pressed his face against the glass. He watched the thug in the hoodie take down a cartel boss. Their eyes met across the tarmac. Pratt looked small, finally realizing the magnitude of his mistake. He had tried to frame a hero, and now he was watching that hero save the day in high definition. "Package secured," Marcus said into his radio, staring back at Pratt. "We are clear." The sun set over JFK, casting long shadows across the crippled Gulf Stream. Marcus sat on the back of an ambulance, his hands stinging from the tarmac scrape. Sergeant O'Malley approached, holding a tablet with a grim look of satisfaction. "You're famous, Thorne," O'Malley said. Sarah Jenkins's video, titled "Security Director Assaults Passenger, Doesn't Realize He's an FBI Agent," had already hit 2 million views. The comments were tearing Garrison Pratt apart. Sovereign Air had issued a panic-induced tweet, firing him effective immediately. But the damage was done. "I need to see him," Marcus said, standing up. In the cold, fluorescent light of the holding cell, Garrison Pratt looked small. Stripped of his tactical gear and his dignity, he sat behind bars nursing a shattered knee. When Marcus entered, Pratt flinched. "You set me up," Pratt whispered hoarsely. "I was just doing my job. You looked suspicious." "I was wearing clothes," Marcus replied, his voice calm but cutting. "You didn't see a threat, Garrison. You saw a bias. And because you were so blinded by arrogance, you assaulted a federal agent while a cartel boss sipped scotch 10 feet away." Pratt began to weep, the reality setting in. "I have a mortgage. I have kids. I helped you catch him. I let the cops in." "No," Marcus said, turning his back. "Officer Miller let the cops in. Miller keeps his job. You tried to plant cocaine on me to cover your tracks. You're looking at 15 years. The heavy steel door slammed shut, leaving Pratt alone in the silence he had created for himself. 6 months later. Snow fell softly outside O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. Marcus sat near a crowded gate, sipping lukewarm coffee and checking the news. Sovereign Air bankrupt. Pratt sentenced to 12 years. Justice had been absolute. Elias Vance was in a supermax awaiting a life sentence, and Pratt was learning what it felt like to be powerless. "Excuse me, sir?" Marcus looked up. A young TSA agent stood there, looking nervous. "Random bag check. Do you mind?" Marcus looked at his bag, then at the hoodie he was wearing. He could feel the heavy gold badge in his back pocket. He could flash it, scare the kid, and flex his authority. But he looked at the agent's face and saw no malice, just a kid doing his job to keep people safe. Marcus smiled, genuine warmth. "Sure thing. Do what you have to do." As the agent finished and walked away, Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from the bureau. Target confirmed. Flight 404 to Miami. Marcus stood up and pulled his hood over his head. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a victim. He was just a man doing a job. As long as monsters hid in first class, the man in the hoodie would be watching from the back. Garrison Pratt judged a book by its cover, and he paid the ultimate price. Marcus Thorne walked away with justice, while Pratt walked away in handcuffs. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and federal justice, please smash that like button. It helps us create more stories like this. And if you want to see more arrogant bullies get what they deserve, hit subscribe and ring the bell. What would you have done in Marcus's shoes? Would you have revealed the badge sooner? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.